Anybody against it?
I see we just went back up on YouTube. And so if anybody's watching the against it or was coming out of closed session, that's all we were voting on.
What did you say, Bronwyn?
I was just clarifying. I saw we came up on YouTube, as you said, anyone against it? And so I was just saying that was to vote whether or not we were coming out of closed session. So if someone was watching, they're not like,
Oh.
what did they vote on? That's all.
I told everybody that they could come in,
Okay,
but I was keeping the door shut because they're having a big conversation out there.
that's okay. Now we're back. And we're back live. So we have a second, and we have a motion, we have a second.
No,
Do we not?
we don't have a first or a second.
Okay,
Yeah, we went right into closed session.
I guess we'll go back to item number 5 then, which is the resolution adopting local law number 3 of 2021, temporary moratorium on certain land use development and zoning reviews and approvals in the rural ag zone for a period of 1 year.
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion?
Andrew, did you want to ask your question?
Can't hear you, Joe.
I don't know how we're. Okay.
Because I don't want to. I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to imply that. That certain things. I don't think it's.
Anybody else? You have any other things you want to say then? I won't put you on the spot, I just want to give you an opportunity to say something else.
I guess the only thing I'd say is planning takes time. I understand that. And putting together the comprehensive plan took a lot of time, a lot of work. And the people who worked on it were not professionals. And those on our planning board are not professionals. They're giving their time and their expertise to the town as best as they can. And sometimes things go much slower than we think they're going to. And don't we wish that everything just could be, okay, we decided this, let's do it tomorrow, let's do it tomorrow. And it goes on and on. And that doesn't work. So I think citizens of our town have to understand that. And they're not in the position of either the planning board, ZBA, or the town board, because everything has to be done properly. We can't always rush. We love to rush. So I guess that's my own.
Okay, we'll go now. But Brown, do you have any comments or? Since this is part of the discussion.
No, I just wanted to thank the folks who came and spoke at the public hearing. I really value hearing from people. That's all.
Okay. Doug?
I'm all set, bud.
Okay, Joe?
I just want to say that I do take seriously the imposition that they put on people to put a moratorium forward. It's not something that I move forward with lightly. It's something I move forward with because I think that planning in the town is critical, and sometimes a moratorium helps allow the planning to be done in a way that it isn't reactive to projects that are being put forward, but it kind of leaves us a more clean slate to sit down and say, here's how we'd like to set up our zoning, not reacting as the zoning is being discussed, or this project's being put forward or that one being put forward.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so I have a few comments. First of all, We've had the advice of the planning board, which was unanimous, that they did not think this was a good idea for a moratorium. We've had the advice of both our experienced planners that they thought this was not a good idea for a moratorium. We had the advice of our council who thought this was not a good idea for a moratorium. And I try to get the yes. And they say the definition of insanity is to keep doing things over again, expecting different results. My personal opinion is this. First of all, I already put $40,000. I proposed $40,000 to go into the B fund in the planning department to get this zoning done. But what I would suggest is this. We're going about this in the same way that seems to be a very long, tedious method. I would move that we do not do the moratorium, but we commission one or both planners to do the zoning changes ahead of time, throw them in front of the planning board, giddy up, yes or no, we've got 2 months, move it to the town board, and then we can go over our public hearings. And turn it around, and let the planners who are experienced drive this thing and throw it in front of the planning board and decide, and give them 2 months or 3 months, whatever. And at that time, if they're not done, you move it on to us. We'll have the public hearings, we'll have the open discussions. That gives us at least 3 to 6 months to do this. And we'll get this thing done within the year, because the only pressure we have right now is the rumor maybe, or the applicant coming in on maybe Monday. All the rest of these projects are going to go through that are in the works right now. So I would say take the angst out of the room, take the threat of the moratorium out of the room, and put it in front of the planners, put it in front of the planning board, tick tock, 3 months, have a nice day, and we'll see you early next year, and we'll move it forward from there. That's what I would propose. Takes the pressure of the moratorium off of the town, because otherwise, if we go into a lawsuit, once again, our resources are going to be moving in a different direction. We've already allocated the money for the resources for CJ to do this. And by doing that, we will ensure that this thing gets done in a year, because we are going to take the control out of certain people. They have a time period for their input. And if their input is not done in a certain time period, guess what? You're going to pass it on to us. And then we'll do the public hearings, we'll do the informational sessions, and we'll make those decisions, and it'll get done in a year. So on that note, do we want to go forward with this, or do we want to have the proposal that I laid out? And if you say no to this moratorium resolution, then we can have a discussion and a resolution moving forward. The other one, to commission the planner and planners to get the job done, to move it so they can have their eyes on it for the planning board, and then have their eyes on it for the town board. That's all I have to say. So, Mrs. Munson, I guess we take a roll call then, or a call, see who wants to vote for the moratorium.
Unless there's any more discussion. I don't know.
Okay, I'll keep it open.
Or do we table it and then take your ideas maybe in the work session, decide that we're gonna
And drive it.
and drive it?
Just drive it. And if they can't drive it, get out of the driver's seat and give me the wheel. And we got 4 other hungry people that are gonna get this thing done.
That's what I'd like to do.
So I guess, do you want to table this motion, or do you want to vote no on it, or how do we, what's the process moving forward, because we have a motion on the table?
Right, we do have a motion and a first and a second, so
So
I guess you could
Parliamentary-
take. Oh, go ahead, Guy.
parliamentary wise, and not to get too hard and deep into rules for deliberative assemblies, the motion was moved and seconded, so it either gets voted on or you agree to table it by having the person who made the motion withdraw the motion. Just understand that tabling it doesn't mean it can't be put back on the table by another motion. Right? So if you get to the work session and everyone says, I think we got a plan here, anybody can still say, I'd like to move adoption of the moratorium. And if it's seconded, you'll still go to a vote.
So I'll turn it over to Joe. Joe, you want to table this motion, or you want to move forward with it?
I want to get clarity from Guy for a second. If it's withdrawn, and let's say at our November meeting, we wanted to move forward with it, could we? Is there a timeline in which you could no longer because we hit some procedural issue?
No, I mean, it's a motion. As long as the text of the law has been and remains in the hands of the town board members and the clerk for 7 days exclusive of Sunday under the municipal home rule law, section 20. And as long as it hasn't materially changed such that you trigger a requirement for a new public hearing, you can move its adoption at any time unless the board specifically, terminates this process. But there's not really a way to terminate a motion in that sense. You always have the right as a legislator to bring something to the floor.
No, I understand that, but procedurally, we had to go through a bunch of hoops to bring it to this point. We had to have a public hearing, we had to do all this stuff. We could do it again in November, December, but we don't have to call another public hearing. We don't have to send it to the county. We don't have to have it, as long as the text does not change, we don't have to go through any of those things, right?
As long as you're not too remote in time, I would say, and I'll take a look once I go back to mute just to double check section 20. But as long as you do it at this meeting or the next meeting, I think you're clearly safe. I think you'd also be safe in December, but there is a point at which you get too remote in time where you couldn't rely on a public hearing from like 2 years ago. So I think as long as you're relatively contemporaneously considering the matter and you're literally debating it and looking at it, it's still on the table in some sense, you're fine. But I would hesitate to go anything past December. I'll take a look at it while I go on mute and you guys move on to some of the other business. And if I see anything that suggests that you have a time limit, i.e. 30 days, 60 days, I'll certainly pipe up.
Okay, so you're saying I should withdraw the motion at this point?
No, I'm saying you can withdraw the motion at this point.
I'm asking procedurally what the language should be. It's withdrawn, so I will.
Just say I'll consent to withdraw the motion for later consideration after our work session at this or then one of the next two meetings. Something like that would be sufficient.
Yep, okay, I will consent to withdraw this to be considered possibly at one of our next meetings.
Okay, the only comment I would have is that if we're going to have a discussion about this moratorium in the future, I would like to have an opportunity for the public to comment on it again. If that comes up, I think that's only fair, but so thank you for withdrawing it. So this is a moot point right now then to move forward with, right? So we're not going to do the resolution. Is that correct?
Not this time.
Does
is that correct?
does Bronwyn have to do anything because she
Yeah,
seconded the
Brown
motion?
also seconded.
Right, do I have to?
You're on mute, guys.
I don't think you have to because you're not the moving party, but in an abundance of precaution, if you consent, just do so.
Yeah, I can consent to withdraw it until we've had a work session about it.
All right, so we'll talk about this during work session.
Yeah, but someone,
Fresh pot of coffee, so we're all set. Okay. So on that note, I guess we can move on to number 6, which is presentation of adult use cannabis. And I think is this Mr. Dan, who we have the pleasure of here, or is he in the? John
I
Dan?
think he was coming on.
Yes, so I'll admit him.
Okay, and this is going to be a limit of 15 minutes. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
I think John has a slide presentation he'd like to share with us too.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
I think he was coming on.
Yes, so I'll admit him.
Okay, this is going to be a limit of 15 minutes. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for introducing me, and thanks CJ and Ed and everyone for giving me the time on the agenda. I'm sorry, what was it?
I hadn't.
If you have your YouTube on.
You'll need to mute your YouTube.
Sorry. There we go. Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I think I've got everything straightened out now. My name is John Dan, and my family and I have been Lansing residents for about 12 years. And for the last 2 of those years, I've been working on a degree in social and public policy focused on policies related to the prohibition and regulation of cannabis. I have about a 4-minute presentation I'd like to share. And once that's over, I'll have a few more minutes to answer any questions that anyone might have. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint. And I'm going to go ahead and start that. Okay. In March of this year, adult use or recreational cannabis was made legal in New York State through the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, or MRTA. New York was about the 16th state to legalize recreational cannabis and has been followed by Virginia, New Mexico, and Connecticut, which means there are now 19 states in the US where adults 21 and over can possess cannabis for recreational use. This does not mean cannabis was illegal in New York until this time. New York has had a robust medical cannabis program since 2016, which as of today includes 38 dispensaries across the state. The MRTA also loosely outlined the licensing structure that would be used to regulate the state's cannabis industry. There will be 11 types of licenses granted by the Office of Cannabis Management, one of the control boards established by the MRTA. These licenses cover every aspect of the industry, from cultivation to processing, distribution, and sales. Of the 11 licenses, the granting of 9 is completely governed by the Office of Cannabis Management. If an applicant applies for a license anywhere in the state and the area is zoned to allow that activity, be it retail, agricultural, industrial, or whatever, the OCM can grant the license. It is the only, this includes the granting of a micro-business license, which in concept is similar to a microbrewery. A micro-business is the only license that grants full vertical integration, meaning that those who have a micro-business license have full control of their product from seed to sale. Municipalities have been given the option to opt out of 2 of the license types: licenses for retail dispensaries and licenses for on-site consumption establishments. Opting out would prevent the OCM from granting these 2 types of licenses in these districts and would prevent the district benefiting from the tax revenue collected through retail sales. A retail dispensary is similar in concept to a liquor store. Product can be purchased there, but not consumed there. A New York on-site consumption establishment will be similar to a bar. Products purchased there must be consumed there. A municipality can opt out of either retail dispensaries or on-site consumption establishments without opting out of the other. And it's also worth mentioning again that opting out of these licenses does not opt a district out of a micro business. So cannabis sales can still legally occur within a district that has opted out of dispensaries and cafes. Opting out also does not prevent cannabis from being delivered within the boundaries of a district that has opted out. When the MRTA was passed, municipalities that wanted to opt out of dispensary or on-site sales had to do so by December of 2021. There is currently a bill being considered by the state Senate that would extend this deadline to December of 2022. Retail dispensaries are the primary type of retail facility that exists throughout the US, and these have been operating successfully here in New York as part of the medical cannabis program since 2016. Several states, including Alaska, Arizona, California, and Colorado, have on-site consumption establishments, as does Canada. Many other states, including Washington, Oregon, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, are working on the legislation that would allow for on-site consumption based on these working models. This means that both the retail dispensary and the on-site consumption establishment have a proven track record of success in other states and countries that have adopted adult use legislation. There is also evidence that New York is already improving on the legislation adopted by other states and countries, such as the lower retail tax rate New York is implementing. These pieces of evidence, combined with the fact that micro businesses and delivery services will still be able to operate in a district that has opted out, means that should the town of Lansing wish to do so, remaining opted into the retail portion of the MRTA is a safe, sensible, and lucrative choice. So that is a very broad overview of one very small part of what's going on with regulated cannabis in New York State. And at this point, if anyone has any questions, I will be happy to try and answer them.
Could you repeat that last part? Because I think that's critical to, I think, some of the processing is going through, at least for me, about the opt-out, opt-in, because it seems as though my colleagues in other municipalities, they are concerned if they don't opt, or if they're not in, okay, for lack of a better word, they're gonna lose out on the revenue stream. And if they opt in later, they won't get any of the revenue because the other sites will be in different municipalities.
It's a great question, and unfortunately, it's not fully decided yet. There are, I do have some examples of how the taxation would work, but if a town or a village were to opt out and then opt back in, it's still unclear how, if money would be distributed at all. I mean, they could, well, it's just unclear, unfortunately.
So, Mr. Dan, just a couple more questions. I'll turn it over to the rest of the board. Have you heard anything pertaining to an extension of the opt-out deadline?
It's currently in the state Senate right now. I believe it's been referred to the Rules Committee. I looked at it today and it hadn't moved. So it's there, but whether or not it'll get passed before December is not clear.
So I guess with sales tax, I mean, obviously everyone collects sales tax, and everyone's trying to make a parallel type of presentation with, it's like sales tax. But the only concern I have, and my apologies for being redundant, is that if you opt out and opt back in, it sounds like we don't have accurate information to find out. The other thing that I have a concern about is, let's say hypothetically, we don't opt out, because I think if we do opt out, there's a permissive referendum. If we do nothing, is there also a permissive referendum, or nothing happens?
No, nothing happens. If you do nothing, by default, everybody's already opted in.
Right.
So it's opting out that requires things to happen. And if there's the referendum would be to opt, I think it would be opt back in. I'm not as clear on that, but there's no action required. If you decide to opt in, we just let it ride, and then we wait and see what what licenses are applied for.
So let's say hypothetically we opt out.
Okay.
In the agriculture could still sell cannabis in the town?
If we opt out, we only opt out of the retail dispensaries and the on-site consumption establishments. Every other type of license can still be granted. So sales still could take place at a micro business, which the zoning for that has not been determined. That's going to be determined by the executive director and the chief equity officer, and they were just appointed a couple of weeks ago. So they still haven't worked out the details on what a micro business is, but those licenses can still exist wherever. And also there's a delivery license for adult use. And so in theory, if somebody wanted to order something from a store that was in Ithaca or maybe the village of Lansing, they could have that delivered to Lansing too. So there's still two ways for retail sales to occur in the town, even if we opt out.
So one more question is that if we do opt out, or excuse me, if we do nothing and we opt in, are we going to have to do some sort of zoning changes to allow that use in certain areas? Or if we do nothing, can it go anywhere? So
the zoning issue, what the MRTA is recommending is not so much that we do zoning changes as time, place, and manner restrictions. And those would be similar to what you would put on alcohol. And
Sure.
There are, definitely standards. We're not gonna be able to put it within anything within 500 feet of a school or 200 feet of a house of worship. I think one important thing to point out too is that if the alcohol and cannabis are not going to be mixing, there's going to be some pretty strict rules. You cannot buy cannabis at a bar. You cannot bring alcohol to a dispensary or an on-site establishment. And so there's going to be a strict separation of those two things as well. But not zoning though. It's mostly recommended that you use time, place, and manner restrictions.
Well, thank you. I have no more questions at this time. If another board member wants to ask questions or comment, please feel free to do so.
You did a good job.
I have a couple.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful. I have two really specific questions. One, when we're talking about there being 11 different licenses, if we choose to opt out of the two that we can opt out of, does that mean that we don't get sales tax from a micro business? Would that be, what happens in that scenario?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that they will be taxed the same. So the retail sales tax that I've read about, the examples that I've read about only applied to retail dispensaries and to on-site consumption establishments. I haven't seen any specific data about how they're going to tax the micro business or the delivery service either for that. So as of right now, I would say no, because they just haven't set that up yet.
Right, it's to be determined. And I've been reading about right now there's a loophole where there are businesses that are opening that like sell a sticker and you get a bunch of cannabis for free.
Yeah.
Was that going to still be a possible loophole even with this new law? So somebody could open a sticker shop somewhere?
So I was shocked to see that happen. And I did read about that. And I read about how the police were saying that there was nothing they could do about it. It's a loophole. I have a hard time with that because there's some pretty specific restrictions on where it can be grown, how much you can gift to people. And there will definitely be licenses that cover that. So if it is a loophole, I mean, congratulations to him. I know this is how they do it down in DC. So I do know that that's how they do it in other places. I was pretty surprised to see somebody pull it off in Elmira, but I have a hard time believing that there's no way to stop it. I feel like Elmira already is decided to opt in anyway. So I feel like they're just kind of letting it go because it's
right. They aren't
definitely going to happen there. I don't see it happening everywhere though. And certainly once the licenses get figured out, that sort of thing won't fly.
Actually, if I can add, there's a bunch of those types of buy this branded cup for $30 and get a half ounce free. There's several dozen of those in New York State. And I was asked to opine on one in a county near here, not Chemung County. It's actually up and running and doing deliveries. And I didn't think it was legal. And I consulted with, they want to remain nameless, but I consulted with the Attorney General and a district attorney. And they both said that they probably should be prosecuted because you can't do it without a license.
Right.
But nonetheless.
Okay, so they're just flying under the radar now. Yeah.
Well, they're taking the position that there's an exemption in there for adult to adult gifts. The problem, of course, is when you sell this styrofoam cup for $30, it's not really a gift. The gravamen of the transaction is the cannabis. And so I concluded that it was an illegal business and so advised the municipality that consulted me. Whether or not they're actually going to do anything or refer it to the district attorney, I left to them.
Okay. Thanks. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you.
Okay. Joe, you have a question?
Yeah, just one quick question. Let's say that the town opts out of the cafe style and leaves the other one going. Do we get tax revenue from the cafes in the village, or does that, do they split it that finely?
That's a great question, and I haven't seen. I looked in the MRTA and I've looked at what they have on the Office of Cannabis Management website, and they have not gotten that deep into how the taxes are going to work out. As far as I could find, I haven't seen anything that gets into those finer details.
My understanding is that the state expected to have this whole office set up with rules and stuff at the beginning of this year, so that while the towns were making these decisions, we'd have an understanding of what we were choosing. And that's why they're discussing legislation to extend that deadline for another year so that they can get caught up because the state's behind, so that we can actually make a decision with some knowledge behind it as opposed to a lot of guesses as to how taxes are going to be distributed and what the rules are for these various licenses and such.
That was my understanding as well. But I just watched the first Office of Cannabis Management board meeting And they are pretty determined to get themselves back on schedule, so that it will not, so that at the end of 2022, they really want to have things up and running. Governor Hochul has said to them, get back on track, go as fast as you can with this. So I think their plan as of right now is to try and hammer everything through and still get into 2022, get into the end of 2022 with retail sales. I still don't think it's a bad idea to give people an option to opt in or out until 2022. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to go. And it doesn't, that bill doesn't seem to be moving quickly. It hasn't moved in a week. I don't know how fast things usually get through the Senate, but
They take forever. They take forever.
yeah. So yeah, it could be December before.
So I guess, well, Joe probably has more questions. I got one when Joe's done.
I'm all set, go ahead, John.
So am I to understand that we're taxing cannabis differently than we tax anything else? In any other way? I mean, why? What's the difference? It's a commodity.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So the difference, I can't say that they're taxing it differently than anything else. I can say why they're taxing it the way that they are. They want to promote social equity and social justice with by keeping the prices lower, by keeping it more competitive, by giving an opportunity for people who don't have a lot of money, but maybe have been selling for the last 10 years, like a mom and pop shop, the chance to get into the micro businesses. So I guess it's a specific example. Like, for example, they are taxing the amount of THC that they're making in products. When you send it to a laboratory, I believe the way it works is you pay a certain tax on the testing of the product based on the amount of THC in the product. That particular tax is to promote a lower potency product on the market. So that, because if you send in a super strong stuff, you're going to pay a higher tax on that, and that tax is going to be reflected in the end price. So that tax exists in the hope of keeping the potency of the products at a manageable level. The 4%, there's two taxes that happen at the retail. There's a 9% tax that goes to the state, and then there's a 4% tax on top of that, and that is split up between the counties, towns, villages, and cities that take part in the retail end of the sales.
But it's different. It's different totally than our taxes. It's totally different. Why? It shouldn't be. It's a commodity.
It does gasoline, cigarettes, liquor, they're
Right.
added taxes by the state. And they're doing it
Right.
on-
They're all added together. That's why it should be taxed the same way as cigarettes, liquor, everything else. Why are we changing it? All of a sudden now it seems like there's this huge hierarchy or a system or structure that has to evaluate all this. I mean, who's making the money there? The state is.
Well, let me just clarify one point, and that is that although the state collects alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and certain types of taxes, most of those are actually driven by the Department of Treasury, not the state. So this is different because the feds still consider this a controlled substance, though that's under consideration. So these are only state taxes that we're dealing with, and there's only a federal income tax. I expect the federal government will put their paws in the pool once they realize there's an excise tax and they change the controlled substance classification of cannabis or THC. But right now it's different because it's a big pile of money and the state wants to be able to have control over how it's spent. That's my take, but I'll defer to John because he's obviously spent a lot of time on this.
I'd actually like to piggyback on what you just said. They have some very specific destinations for this money. On the Office of Cannabis Management website, they lay out the percentages. Some's going to go to public education, some is going to go into public safety, and then some is going to go into a social justice and social equity fund in order to undo some of the damage that was done by the war on drugs and to help support the towns that were hit hardest by the policies that were carried out during that time. And that, I think, is probably another answer. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong thing to do, but I think that's probably the answer, is that they have some very specific destinations for this money. And yeah, there's a separation between the federal and the government on this one, or the state on this one.
Wow.
Okay, Mr. Dan, thank you so much. Are there any more questions? We need to move on. Are those slides available for us to? They are, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. Much appreciated. So anyways, I think we have our information. Unless there's any other comments. We're still waiting for, we have an advisory board, I believe, that's trying to come up also with a recommendation. And hopefully, and I'll make a phone call to our state senator probably tomorrow and see if we can get this at least postponed for a while. See if we have all the details worked out first before we can process the options and come to a conclusion.
Well, I'll just say quickly, the advisory committee advised us to bring this presentation to the town board because we thought it would bring a lot of information that I certainly didn't know until I heard it at the committee level.
So I guess we'll be waiting for the advisory board to make a recommendation. Is that the advice they have? Is just to watch the presentation and?
And well, the advisory
Although-
committee wasn't complete, a lot of people couldn't make it. And I think we have an issue of, if the opt-out date doesn't change, we have a timeline that we need to follow if we're going to opt out of anything. And so I think we need to have a discussion as to, do we want to opt out at this point? And I think we're running up against the timeline, which is why the committee felt it was more important to educate the board than to come up with a specific recommendation.
Well, okay. The unfortunate thing is we don't have accurate, up-to-date information. Nothing against Mr. Dan, but it's like some of the stuff is inconclusive to what the options are. And I think that's the most frustrating part. If we knew, if you do A, this is what happens. If you do B, this is what happens. But I think there's some vagueness there, or there isn't any exact actions that will result from those choices. So I think you have been very helpful, at least for me, Mr. Dan. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome, and thanks for the time. I appreciate that.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Hopefully we'll have more information soon to see if they'll extend this or not. Item 7, privilege of the floor. We limited to 20 minutes, but a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. We grabbed the one sheet. Do we have any more people that want to use privilege of the floor?
is there any on the sign-in sheet back there? Sorry. I don't think there was when I looked before.
Okay, could you bring that forward, Hugh? I mean, we need to play records. Please. So, friend, I'll set this up. So Hugh Bahar. You're up to 3 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Hugh Bahar, I live in Lansing, 4 Sunset Drive. So a few things I want to talk about regarding cannabis in particular. Number one, I would like this board in November to have some sort of a meeting where the public is invited and where an education session can be given to the public, similar to the way the meeting was opened up for the moratorium discussion. I would like to see the public invited and be able to express their opinions and talk to the board about what they feel about bringing marijuana into the town. Mr. Dan is off at the moment off the screen, but I think he did a great job. I'd like to commend Ed and CJ for inviting him to come and give an impartial review that was balanced on this topic. Also like to remind everybody here that marijuana is a controlled substance federally. The states may have legalized it, this is still a federal issue. And as far as I know, the federal government's not come down and said marijuana is a legal substance to sell on a retail level. A couple other topics here. I think before we go ahead and say we opt in or allow it to opt in, this town board needs to decide where, in what zoning areas they would allow retail establishments to exist, and give the planning board the authority to, if applications are put in for retail establishments, give the planning board the authority to know, are we going to allow them in industrial areas only? Are they going to be allowed in, or other zoning areas? Are we going to create an area similar to a liquor store, where liquor stores are allowed now to put these? So let's see here. I think that Ed's points in earlier town board meetings about waiting to see how other towns deal with this and how the ones that opted in, what the downstream effects of those decisions are, is prudent. There's enough unknowns here that we should probably back off and wait. And you know, Lansing's been around for 100+ years and it's been fine without having cannabis tax revenue. I think at this point, but it's not something that we should rush into. And I agree with that we should be waiting to see where this lands with the groups of the other towns that opt in, that allow the opt-in to happen by default. I think this is a big enough issue that the comprehensive plan should address where we're going to allow zoning for marijuana establishments. The planning board needs to have the authority to determine where these things are going to go. Right now, we have a liquor store within a mile of the school. Is that where we're going to be putting retail cannabis areas? Another thing I think the town board should solicit is the opinion of law enforcement on this topic. I would like to know whether law enforcement currently has metrics like they do a breathalyzer or a blood test to determine whether a person's intoxicated or not in a non-subjective way. So they can determine that. And so if we end up with people, thank you. Is that it? If we end up with people on the road that have enjoyed this product, that we have a metric to be able to determine whether or not they are under the influence and intoxicated. I think law enforcement should be consulted long before this body determines to go ahead and list the default opt-in occur. I think that was my 3 minutes. So that was,
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to use the privilege of the floor? CJ, do you have anybody in the waiting room?
Nope, no one in the waiting room.
Anyone in the audience? Here? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 8 in your packet. Yep, library report. You have it in front of you. Andre, I think you're the liaison to the library. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm just going to have to listen to
Credit them for being innovative.
we're trying to.
How's the roof coming? And the bees are gone? Oh,
The bees are gone, but the roof still has problems,
oopsie.
Yep.
Okay.
especially with the deluge
Ooh,
that we get.
one miracle at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. Agenda number 9, Lansing Youth Service Report. We have that also in your packet.
That's going extremely well. In fact, I met with the son, youth manager Travis Judd today. And he's so happy that he works in the town of Lansing. And that he is so supportive, not only by the town, but by the school and also by All Saints Church that lets them use it for free when they can't do stuff outside.
Nice.
So it's
Nice.
very, very good. program.
Nice. We're happy to have it also. Agenda 10, Tompkins County Legislative Report. We have Mike Sigler live in person with, I gotta tell you, don't stop. You are pushing the limits. I love it. I love it. Beyond my skill set. Okay, so anyway, you are a well-dressed man. Go ahead, man.
Well, you know, I have COVID-19, so everybody back, put you back to where it worse. I just want to thank everybody, thank you for having me again. Big news this week from the county is we have passed the budget, and we're going to submit to public comment. The budget already included a tax rate decrease, so that was good news. Now we're going to add some more money, so that we're not going to increase the tax levy. So the tax levy will be 0 as well. So that's pretty good news. Some people are concerned that we're taking this money out of the fund balance. However, our sales tax is looking really good, almost twice where we thought it was. So we feel confident that we can do this. And it's right. Everybody's struggling. It's not just agency, it's everybody. It's paying taxes. So we can hold those taxes. to zero. More power to us. So again, more money, we're just giving it back. That budget will now go to a public hearing. That's for November 9th at 7 p.m. If people want to come speak out on it. So that'll be at chambers, legislature chambers. Since I was last in the legislature, also approved the use of up to $7 million of the counties of the government's our unassigned fund balance. You've been hearing a lot maybe about that, how big it is. Part of that's because we got all this money from the government. So we put that towards some programs. We have now started this community recovery fund program. Ed and CJ, I emailed you the latest on this actually. There's now a way to apply for it. So this program is going to apply grants to support some of the community recovery following the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. That request for proposals is going to go out soon, but like I said, I just sent you something on that, so take a look at it. I can send it to you if you want. CJ has it. Bill Troy, he was unanimously appointed as Tompkins County Attorney effective November 1st, 2021. I've known him for a long time. It was an internal promotion. He, right now, he's resigning this position, is the attorney for the village. So that's probably how you know. But he will now be the county attorney. Jonathan Wood retiring, also from Lansing. So Jonathan Wood is out in Bill. COVID-19 still a challenge for the county. We've got cases hovering about 130 cases, but it keeps going down. We're seeing single-digit cases now in some places, and we're seeing we only have about 4 people in the hospital. So that's we at the county are really emphasizing the hospitalization. Why do you want to get vaccinated? Because you probably aren't going to end up in the hospital. If you do. Children vaccinations, we're expecting that to be approved any time by the federal government, and then that will be the county pushes to get children vaccinated. So that's where we are at the county. So Lansing should be proud, I think, because in the paper I just read, you guys did this physical survey for broadband, see who doesn't have it, and how do you get them there. The county is missing a very similar approach. We were doing a big study, and it was just taking it. Right? We put it on the back burner. Now we're going to go out. We're going to look who doesn't have broadband. Okay, how do we get this people? So that's what we're doing. And in Lansing, thank you. That's the direction we went into, and because it's really not that many homes. There's no reason to delay anymore. We're down to a few hundred, homes. We should be able to help those people. So thank you for that. We are also talking about new paid holidays in the county. Juneteenth, excuse me. The Youth Services Department is seeking applicants for the Governor's Youth Council. So there's a link in my report where people want to apply for that. Attorney General Tia James, she did come to town, announced some money we're going to be getting from the opioid settlement. If you remember, the county did opt into this. That was $1 million to $1.75 million is what we're expecting. And frankly, that should all go to helping people get off drugs. Also, alcohol and drug council was ready to announce this. So that's where I think it should go. And I think most people. We also, you may have heard in my call, airport director, he is retired. We have now begun the process for the airport director. We just did that this month. County administration, and sheriff's office, they met to discuss the launch and implementation of a pilot program for non-emergency calls, traffic enforcement and data on. That's all part of the reimagining. And you should really, if you go to the county website, and look at the reimagining, you can make commentary on that right there on. That information will be considered. That's about it. That's a lot. There's a lot of them.
You're a busy guy. Does anyone have any questions for Michael and his magic sauce? I gotta give me a pair. Sorry. We'll talk later.
I've got it all.
Does anybody? Anyway, go ahead. This guy.
Talk about hats.
Yeah, I mean, you had no.
I don't get a comment every time I wear a different hat.
That,
I do not.
that's it.
Guess what? We're gonna have our hat moment here. And you have great taste. So, do you have any questions for Michael?
No, well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you.
No.
Okay, ground one. Who's going out by the order? Any questions for Michael?
I just can't see the socks from here.
Oh,
No,
I could get you a picture and text it to you.
We can see your shoe.
Okay,
I know. Gosh, come on, you know it. I got a cat in a hat thing going in my head right now. Okay. Just saying. Okay, Doug?
I'm all set. Thanks, Mike.
Nope.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. I can't get out of my head now. Sorry.
It's all right. Oh, and my birthday is October 27th, so if you want to send presents, you have my.
Socks.
Stop. Stop.
Like any- Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Bye-bye. All right. Let's move on to Park and Rec. And Pat is not with us tonight, but he has been extremely busy. As talking to him today, they're trying to wrap up everything before the winter comes. So we're in scramble mode. And speaking of scramble mode, first of all, Pat's report is in here in the packet. Speaking of scramble mode, we have Mike Mosley now, who now has the supervisor hat on snugly. And anything you want to add to our on your comments? I think we got Pat's comments and your comment pertaining to the roof. And we'll discuss that probably a little while, but anything else going on? My understanding is you're paving, but yes, that will be reimbursed by the CHIPS money, right? Because we need to do that first and you're almost there, right?
Yes, we need to spend the money in order to be reimbursed through CHIPS, early winter recovery, and the Pave New York. So in talking with Jim Dalrymple, hopefully next week, he's hoping to pave 34 and then tie in some of our roads off 34, East Lake, Sun Path, and Autumn Ridge Drive. We picked up some of the other roads, Salmon Creek Road, and we're right now just trying to shim to get us through the winter. It's late in the year, so we're pushing hard. The sidewalk came together. I'm going to be in contact. I have an email out with TCAT in order to move the bus structure. Combination, great help. Shout out to Park and Rec, along with the Highway Department guys for making that come together. State DOT up on Warren Road was very helpful with the signage and painting the crosswalk. So if that wasn't done today, I'm sorry. I was up on the west part of town. So if it wasn't done today, it should be done tomorrow.
It's nice, at least the ones I saw, the sidewalk and the slab underneath the pavilion. They look
Right.
nice.
Yep.
And
Other than that, that's
part of that will be from the Sam's grant also, right, Mike?
yes. Yep. I'm right in under the wire for the permitting with the state and the grant. So I think I can get together with Charmaine and get everything into her here in November.
Good. Any questions for Mike from the board?
Good job, Mike.
Yeah,
Thank you.
excellent. Question for you though, the bank stabilization for Salmon Creek.
Yes.
Is that still going on? And I guess, my question would be, since we're considering ARPA type of things in the future, is that something that could be the ARPA money used for?
The bank stabilization at this point is done. We shared the cost along with the Tompkins County Soil and Water. They honestly picked up the majority of the cost. The town covered, the highway department covered the labor and the equipment rental. They covered all of the materials, being the heavy and medium rock fill. So honestly, we're in pretty good shape on that.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well. Agenda item number 13, Director of Planning, CJ. You've cut back. You've only got 2 full pages. It says 3. Just kidding. So, how are you doing?
Good, good. Hi, Town Board.
So, thank you for this report.
Of course.
You want to add anything to it?
Well, I think it says quite a bit, but I am happy to answer any questions about any of the functions or items discussed in it.
Any of the board members have any questions? they're waiting for the grants to say yes or no, right? So the grant thing is out there waiting for a positive response. And Michael's
Yeah, we've
waiting
got,
for his back truck.
yeah.
Um,
Yes, yes, we have three. Well, actually, we have four if you count the grant application that just went into Park Foundation. We're all waiting to hear in December. So the first, or the one submitted in July, which was another leg of the Salmon Creek Stream Bank Stabilization Project. Also the vacuum truck, as well as, of course, Myers Park. Those are the three large grants that would come out of the consolidated funding application. So we should hear about that plus or minus December 15th. And also put in a application to the Park Foundation for an open space index for the town's Conservation Advisory Council. So that was a significant request for them to essentially get a lot of mapping help and to do some cool story maps online to really kind of beef up the also the online presence of how we're viewing our conservation data in the town. So the index will be really very useful to us as well. So anyway, yeah, we're waiting to hear mid-December for all four of those grants. You'll know when I know.
Fingers crossed. Any questions for CJ? Question I have or a comment. And I don't know if there's any grant money out there for a hoist truck. That's something that we might be looking for in the future for Michael when he has to hoist out all the valves when the sewer lines are plugged and things of that nature. And worst comes to worst, that may come out of the sewer fund if and when we have that discussion in the future. That's just an FYI for further discussion. But as we get more and more involved with sewer, those are things that are necessary as opposed to putting it on I would say an unfair load on the Grado. It's like trying to pound a nail with a screwdriver. It isn't really designed for that, and it risks damage to it, but we'll go with that. The thing that I think we can talk about in the future, and this is simply planting seeds, is the consolidation of some of these committees. Because a lot of them have overlapping themes, and it might be the fact that you're involved with so many committees that it pulls you away from your other work. Maybe we can condense some of these committees into one committee and they can deal with all the different things at the same time. I'm simply planting a seed for that. So maybe we'll have a discussion with the board probably early next year. I think we've had a chance to look at the committees. I think that they've been nurtured quite well. I think that they move forward quite well. But I think also that some of these committees might be consolidated into a bigger theme. That's just my personal opinion. But we'll have a more thorough discussion about that down the road. That's just a preview of coming attractions. Anything else for CJ? Silence is golden. Okay, thank you. Thank you again, CJ. As always, great work. Same thing with John and Heather and Scott. Okay. We're moving to agenda item 14, David Herrick, engineers report and the Ag Committee number 15. There's nothing to report this month. Move on to the consent agenda. Okay, Mrs. Munson.
Okay.
You have the helm guiding through the choppy waters.
Okay, so usually we have quite a few items in the consent agenda tonight. Usually, a town board member will read 2 or 3 of them, taking their turns until we get to just the title of each one, and then we get to the end. The last one is let's see, J, I guess it is. And then we'll have the first and the second, and I will state right up front that I will have to adjust the resolution numbers tomorrow, because the first resolution that we had, we tabled for tonight, which is going to change all these resolution numbers. So don't be surprised when they get changed. So there you have it.
Yeah, there's 10 of them, right? There's still 10, right? They haven't changed in the consent agenda.
I didn't count them.
There's 10 so far.
Okay.
And I'll take 2, so don't fight over it. So Andre, you go first. First two, please.
The first is, motion to approve brokerage agreement with Salmon Real Estate respecting town center property matters. Motion authorizing Conservation Advisory Council to prepare and send thank you letters relative to Bell Station lands.
Okay, Brown, you want to do C and D, please?
Sure. C, resolution scheduling public hearing for special districts proposed 2022 budgets. D, resolution scheduling public hearing for the town of Lansing preliminary budget for 2022.
Doug, E and F, please.
Resolution memorializing changes to tentative budget and authorizing preparation and filing of preliminary budget. F, resolution requesting reduction of speed limit on Alessandro Drive, Chelsea's Walk, Estates Drive, Horizon Drive, Laurel Lane, Leslie Lane, and Rosina Drive.
Okay, Joe, do you, G and H, please?
Resolution establishing 2022 water rates. H, resolution approving the 2022 amendment to the health insurance consortium.
I, resolution authorizing highway intermunicipal shared services agreement. And J, resolution approving audit and budget modifications and supervisor's report.
I'll move that.
I'll second it. Munson?
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Dake,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losi,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. It's a little curveball, maybe.
What?
Went out without the order. I love it. Keep us on our toes. Item 17, do we want to discuss this first, or shall we just first and second the motion?
Let's discuss it.
Okay, I think that we don't have to table it, remove it, right? If everybody's in agreement, I mean, that's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. So we've gotten the report from Mike and also from Pat that they're not in favor of doing this project right now. I think Pat feels as though they can patch it for it now because of the price. And I think it's up to the board if we want to just remove this resolution or if we want to continue with it.
I'd like to remove it.
I second it.
Are we all in consensus?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ron, are you okay with that?
Well, I see that Dave Herrick's here and I was wondering if it's to speak to this, if we need to hear from him or like but yes, I'm okay with that.
I mean, Dave is here. If he wants to speak to it,
Yes.
that's fine.
I
Because we did go through the
didn't want to
process.
miss this opportunity, yeah.
No, oh, please, Dave. Go ahead, Dave. We got half an hour to burn. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, okay, so,
You have 3 minutes, Dave, 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, the sergeant of the army said you got 3 minutes, so give me
I'll take 30 seconds, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, if the town is uncomfortable with the cost of this roofing system and you wish not to accept any of the bids, then I would suggest that you do a formal resolution to reject all bids. You don't have to state any reasons why, but if that's your determination, then I would so let all of the bidders that did provide bids know that.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we would reject all bids.
I second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
That's a little bit.
Yeah.
Just hang on, just hang on here a second.
Yeah,
Okay, Ed was the first, and who was the second, Andra?
sorry.
Okay.
To the next one.
Resolution to reject all bids. Okay, I'll write up something to that effect tomorrow. Do we need any other discussion on that? Okay. Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Dake,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losi,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yeah.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Are we in a similar situation with number 18? Do we still use the public hearing and make a public hearing on this?
I think we should. Yeah.
We can always rescind it if we have to, if they extend the date or whatever down the road. I mean,
I
okay.
don't think it's bad for people to give us input. I mean,
I think that would fall maybe into Bahar's recommendation. to
Okay, it's
input.
on the agenda. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Would you like to make the motion?
I make a motion that we'll schedule a public hearing on adult use cannabis, retail dispensaries. Sorry.
That's what I could do.
Thank you, sir. Consumption establishment at the town of Lansing. Do we have to put a date on this?
I'll second it. It probably would be at 6.
Well, in
there.
this motion, I have
I'm sorry.
November 17th at 6:31.
Okay,
I'll second it.
before the next one.
No, this is at the next,
At the next.
well, the
one.
next board meeting is the budget one on November 3rd, and
Oh, that's right.
this one is scheduled for the next
the regular- the regular.
normal.
17th,
Yeah,
right? November 17th, I believe. At
yes,
6:35. so it'd be the
6:31.
Oh, 6:31.
Try not,
Congratulations.
try not to waste time.
Okay.
Okay,
I have a question on this. Is there some resolution that the public is going to be commenting on? Do we have something, are we saying we're considering opting out? Are we saying we're considering doing both? What are we asking the public to comment on?
This is an excellent question because we don't know what the resolution will be yet. Because.
We may not even have it.
Well, that's a good question too, but if you have a public hearing, at least you get the input from the public.
Yeah.
Now, as we just talked about with another resolution we had, we always can table it for a month afterwards to determine. Maybe in a month's time, we'll have more information to find out what the specifics are. But I think with the public hearing, at least you have the input of the public, at least they have an invitation to everyone to have their input. So I don't like to not do a resolution afterwards, because usually there's an action that will follow that. But I think we're within the scope, as Guy has clearly told us before, with parliamentary procedure this evening, that we can still postpone it for a month. So we're still within that window. 2 months is iffy, but I think we can do it for a month if we have to postpone it until December meeting to vote on the resolution.
So the resolution would be the opting out resolution that the public's commenting on, but we don't necessarily have to move on that.
Well, once again, that's a good point, because you're not gonna have a resolution to opt in if you're already in.
Right.
I think that should be explained too.
I think that's
Because I don't
good.
think most people know.
No, they don't. So this is some, go ahead, CJ.
Sure, yeah, not to be vague, but we've been trying to be proactive and being mindful of the December 31st, 2021 deadline, essentially, for the town to essentially make a statement on this one way or another. And so in reaching out to Association of Towns and actually county planning as well, to try to see, what was on the horizon for other municipalities, this was the advice, was to kind of have roundtables, to invite the public to provide really any comment on the issue. I've also asked the ad hoc working group, so the folks, there's several members of the planning board and a town board member who have been discussing the issue. They're going to have 2 additional meetings between now, which I'm going to send them a calendar when to meet tomorrow morning. Between now and November 17th to hopefully come up with some kind of, policy direction, if nothing else. So, I mean, we're a little bit stymied by the lack of information at the state level, as you've heard plenty from John Dan previously, and of course town council has provided extensive analysis on this as well. But the short of the long is, this has been the recommendation from town and county agencies to essentially get any kind of public feedback. And if there's something you'd like me to do in terms of a presentation or invites to specific folks, I'm all ears on how to get more outreach to the community to get comment on this for you. So.
Well, one thing we can have, if we had this public hearing scheduled, obviously there's the invitation, but I think also we have time for the advisory board to come up with a recommendation, which has been done in the past. This is why we have advisory boards, to advise what the resolution would say. And the resolution may say we do nothing, and we stay opt in. Or it may, and I think it needs to be clear that doing nothing is an action. An action happens if we do nothing. Same as if we opt out, here's the action. Also, if we opt out, there will be a referendum, there will be a vote, moving forward on that also. So these are all dynamics that happen. I don't think it's just a yes or no. There are actions that happen by doing either doing nothing and staying, I guess, opt in, or we opt in by default, or we opt out intentionally and then we put it to a vote for the residents.
And that has to happen referendum.
I believe it triggers it, if I'm not mistaken, CJ. I believe it actually would trigger it if we opt out.
Oh, if we opt out.
Right.
Yeah, towns, as the law stands right now, I mean, Guy could speak more to what's circulating, I suppose, in the state legislature, if you could call it that. We're trying to obviously watch it carefully. Towns have until December 31st of this year to speak their piece forevermore, and that's it. And so that's why we've been talking with town clerk and looking kind of ahead at some of the dates to make sure that we have enough time to post a permissive referendum, that we have a time to talk about this. And so we really need to start honing in on this in the December meeting. Unfortunately, the time aligns with the budget meeting, but we really need to get input from people one way or another. So.
Well, and I guess one of the biggest input you can get is have a referendum. Then you're going to get the input either for it or against it. And I'm quite frankly, I know it's time consuming. I also know that it's costly, but in all fairness, there's your final answer of everyone's input. If you like it or not, because you vote on it. I mean, that's just my opinion. Am I in favor of that 100%? I'm leaning towards that just for that reason. Let's trigger a vote and let the town decide. But we'll see. We still have time for recommendation from the advisory board, and there may be more information coming out there that once again we're not aware of because these little drips happen, and here we are. We learned a lot tonight from Mr. Dan. Dan, right? Yeah, John Dan. And that was helpful. And maybe we'll have another person or two that will also have information down the road. So enough battle for me. I guess anybody else want to make a comment on before we vote on?
I was just wondering if we could put John's presentation up on the website so the public can see what he presented to us.
I think anything we can do to help this will be get the information out there to have people see it. And also, I think our comments from perhaps law enforcement and from other people should also be put out there so people can see it and move on from there. More information about it. The other thing is that I'd love to be able to get from someone from the medical field to feel, okay, what is your opinion on this? I mean, I've dealt with medical marijuana before, but what's your opinion on this in general? And maybe someone from the medical field could also give their input on this. Anyways, any other comments before we move on to a vote? This is just to set the public hearing.
Correct. Yes, I have it, I believe I had this right. Andrew made the motion, or yes, made the motion and Ed made the second. Okay. Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Dake,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losey,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Okay, board member reports.
No,
No, one more.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I checked that out ahead of time. My mistake. Item 19, resolution adopting tax mandatory training requirements for workplace violence and sexual harassment for all committee members.
I'll second it.
Perfect. Any further discussion?
You mentioned printed version.
Printed version.
You said you printed out.
Maybe it was this. I think it was the parameters. And the parameters are that they have until a certain date. to do
November
it.
19th
Yeah,
to complete it.
yeah,
Fine, thank you.
yeah. I just got mine from, by the way, I just got mine from, Bolt Point, if I got one else with Joe. And also the service board, we have until I think October 31st for ours, but anyways. Yes, so that is on there, I believe.
It's part of the resolution. If they need to complete the training by November 19th, or they're off the committee as of December 31st, and then they can't be on another committee for 1 year.
So this is just talking about the volunteer committees. This is not the planning board, the ZBA.
That's my understanding. And maybe all the other people have completed their
They have
training.
not.
Oh, they have not.
They have not.
Okay, this was written,
Our planning board members who've not completed this stuff.
okay, this was written for committee members. If it should be changed some way,
I don't think
know.
we can, because I don't think we can just by this kind of resolution, take somebody off the planning board for not doing that. I think we have to go through.
No, what you do is in the organizational meeting,
Mhm.
you can go through, you can take anybody off the board that's not elected. If you have 3 yeses, you can do that. And what you can do is you can give a warning and whatever, there's ways we can do this. But the reason Mary Ellen's here, because as the HR person, I asked her input to how much, what teeth can you put into this, and what are the best parameters? And the other thing I would look at, if someone hadn't done the training on one of the boards, is there a history of this or not? Is it one of those things that they haven't done in the past?
Mhm.
Do you give them a warning? Do you say next time or whatever, do within 6 months? I don't know. But I think one miracle at a time, let's get this, there's a big bunch here.
There's a big bunch here, and there's some on the planning board.
And I think we can urge them, between our liaison, our alternate, we can urge them at the next meeting on Monday, that it's, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. So let's go.
Okay.
I just, one more thing, I don't want to put any words in Mary Ellen's mouth or whoever's planning to do this, but I think the intention was, when I wrote this last week, was this would give whomever the person is going to be contacting the committee members, and maybe it could go to planning board members as well, that I don't know. This can actually be sent right out and say, this is the town's policy, this has to happen, instead of making, an employee be the bad person. This is the town board decision, if this passes. So
Well, the HR person is simply implementing the policy.
correct, with this
And-
resolution here, simplifies.
And if I could interject, it's not just our policy as a town. This is a state requirement. We can't have people say, can we waive this? No, we can't. These are the two trainings that are required by New York State. Sexual harassment is New York State overall, public, private, any employer. That's just a state mandate. The workplace violence is a mandate for public employers. So there's no choice here.
So let me ask you a question. Why can't the words planning board be put in this resolution? Is there some problem that can't happen?
Or
I
is it-
think we can't throw them off for a resolution like this. I think we have to specifically throw them off. I think the board has to vote and say, John Doe is being thrown off. We can't just pass a resolution that says if you haven't completed all this, you'll be terminated as of this date.
Well, let's find out. CJ first and then Guy.
There you go.
Right, CJ?
I was just gonna say, local law 1 of 2020 has very specific training requirements for planning board members and zoning board of appeals members. So that go beyond this as well. So my understanding is that is already in place, but perhaps Guy has more to say about that.
And
Well-
if those requirements aren't, I'm sorry, Guy, but if those requirements aren't met, does it mention consequences in there also, CJ?
My understanding is that planning board members and zoning board members can be removed after a public hearing.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we remind the members of the planning board and the ZBA of this
Yep.
in another email and ask them graciously, if no one has done the training yet, would you please do it by the end of the year?
Yeah, exactly.
Or by
And-
whatever
and-
date you want.
Right. And to be clear, if they've had this training, especially the sexual harassment, if they work for somebody else, they've probably had the training.
Yes.
The level that a committee member has to have is at the supervisory level, which basically covers quid pro quo and things like that, which if they've only had the employee level training, we can then supplement and just give them that piece for the supervisory piece. But then they have to have the workplace violence. So, and I do have options now that I can, if they don't want to go online to do this, which honestly is much easier, but if they'd like it in print, I have found out that that's okay too. We just have to have an acknowledgement. There's actually more for them to do with a printed, written training. But if they prefer that, we can do that too. So between now, for the next month, there's
One thing is that when
options to be trained. Yeah.
Mary Ellen, when you send out these emails, you also send out the link.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
Again.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Guy, then Brown. Guy, I cut you off before.
Well, you're talking about the confluence of a number of laws. The training requirements are variably in the labor law. The grounds for removing a public officer are in the public officers law, and the ways upon which you can address removal of a planning or ZBA member for not meeting their mandating training is within the town law and the town code. So those bodies of law all don't mesh up. But generally speaking, if it is mandated that you are required to have certain trainings to meet the qualifications for your office and you don't get them, then you are not qualified to take the office. So for example, if a zoning board member is required to have 4 credit hours of planning and land use zoning training per year, and they just don't bother with it and say, who cares? They'll never do anything. It's not a question of whether you remove them or not. They're ineligible for the office and they cannot stay. That's how it works. It's automatic. Now, the town can save them by granting grace periods, but some of these rules don't line up well, and you don't have to have public hearings under the civil service law or bring proceedings in front of the appellate division under public officers law, section 36, to remove people who are not qualified for office. So they have to get the training or they can't be seated. That's how it works.
So Guy, could we add the planning board to this resolution? And if they don't do the training, they're off by whatever the date is, December?
You have to be done by November.
They're done by the date or they're off by that date. Can we add them on? And if they don't do the training, they just.
Well, yes, you can add them because the training should apply to all town officers and all town employees, regardless of whether they're seasonal, part-time, intermittent, full-time, appointed, elected, or whatever. So they probably should be there because they do have a mandatory training requirement.
But can I ask, what about the zoning board? Why not the zoning board?
They would be there too.
Yep.
Why don't we
Okay.
add them?
And
Conservation Advisory Council, like the whole list of committees?
All of
Yeah, all of them. Volunteers are still considered employees for the purposes of these training laws. Now, I think that is absolutely true for sexual harassment. I'm not 100% sure it applies for workplace violence, but I think that's a distinction without a difference. They're both important and they're both very closely related. So they should get both, period.
Okay, Brown, you're next.
A couple things. One, Mary Ellen, thank you for doing all of this work on this and giving us a really clear timeline and helping us sort this out. Thank you. And what if we just put in the first number here, whereas blah, blah, all committee and board members, because then that covers planning board, zoning board. It's not just the committees, it's also the boards. Would that solve
Yeah. I mean, that's
the discussion we're having?
it literally covers everybody.
Exactly.
So
with that
verbiage you want to add in there that seems appropriate to you folks?
Outside of elected officials, right? That would be problematic.
Right.
Right? Elected officials.
Yeah, we're not going to, I suppose so. I would hope that elected officials understand that part of their.
I understand that.
But I was just wondering if putting that language in would fix the problem.
I'm going to say is that rather than put all board members, I think that that would be a little bit problematic if they were elected. So there must be a way. I would just add planning board.
Right. I that is going to probably be a Guy question, but as far as from what I understand, from PESH about the workplace violence and also from the state for the sexual harassment is that as long as somebody is an employee, if we are giving the permission to do work on the part of the town. So that, yes, certainly covers elected officials. We're giving them permission to do work on as part of the town. But are we going to, can we like kick you out of being elected office for not doing it? Yeah, guy. Right, right,
I
right.
think it's a
So,
moot question because we don't.
So again, this is where that confluence comes into play because no, you couldn't automatically kick out a public officer because you have a superseding law called the Public Officers Law. So if someone on the board or a planning board were to move to Groton or to Schenectady, they would no longer be qualified. There'd be a de facto automatic resignation.
mhm.
But if someone fails to meet the requirements of office, they still can, even if an elected official, they can still be subjected to disciplinary procedures or removal. Though I would think, given the nature of the case law under Section 36, failure to attend to training wouldn't be enough to remove you unless there were other bad acts or problems, such as what we just went through in our governor's office.
Right.
I mean, there was 9 years of failed training and other problems, so that was enough.
Mhm.
So
What do we
again,
add?
I think elected officials have to take a leadership role. I don't think there's a single elected official in this town that would not do the training. I'd put them on the list, treat
Yep.
everyone the same.
And that, I agree 100%. Treat everybody the same. Yep, as far as the training goes. Yep.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if to include everybody, if we just say all committee and board members, and then everybody's covered.
I'm good with that.
That's fine.
I'm fine with that. And then I just had one other question, which is in the future, like for next year, are we going to do this as part of our organizational meeting? Is this kind of just going to be part of all of that packet?
I'm sorry.
No, I love it. Assistant.
Yay, Zoom. So I've been thinking about this. So I think the thing to do, honestly, is to make this training kind of a quarterly event. I was thinking an annual event, like, every spring in April and May, we do this, we contact everybody for this training. And having read about some other ways of doing this, I think the better option, because we have seasonal employees, we have committee members that come on and off, that we have basically once a quarter. So whether that's the first week of every quarter or whatever it is, that we say, okay, here's the training, attend, not attend, whatever it is. But we do it on a quarterly basis, basically, is what I'm thinking.
May I say something?
Absolutely.
So number 4 in the resolution, we wrote, beginning January 2022, committee members must complete workplace violence, actually prevention training.
Oh, for the initial, you're right.
I forget the prevention part, sorry.
Yeah.
Sexual harassment prevention training at the time of their initial assignment and at least annual thereafter. So
right.
If that you either do it starting in January, or if you don't start your job until May, then you do the training in May.
Correct. And here, I'm sorry.
Right, I would think, it just says at least annually thereafter. It doesn't say at that point they're going to get kicked out, but.
Right.
I don't think we're gonna micromanage and say, Joe, you're thinking July or next month, but actually you took it in August, and that's not annually enough.
Right.
Because that's exactly what we're doing now.
Yeah.
We have the poor person who's in charge, and now it's Mary Ellen's turn. Before that, it was Charmaine's turn. Have you done this? It's like the mother hen going after chicks. Have you done this yet? And yeah, I'm on it, right? And it's a very sore point. And I think now And Mary Ellen is, because of her HR experience, I think she had given us some great guidance on how to frame this so that
Mhm.
there will be results or there'll be unfortunate consequences.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty confident that we can get a handle on this. Because part of the, honestly, when it comes to committees and things like that, especially if there's a new, whatever, new committee, you start your new year, you set something up so the first meeting of the year, we do the training with everybody. I mean, we can get a hold on this. It's not going to be, it's not we're taking a exorbitant amount of time for everybody. And we just explain, this is just something that's mandatory. This is just something that we've got to do. We got to, and it's to everybody's benefit, right? To train you about sexual harassment prevention, what it means, what your responsibilities are. And the same with workplace violence, what that means, what your responsibilities are as a committee member. And then you go on with your year, your meetings, and you're done.
So we can always tweak it if we have to, but for now, I think we have the language in there that's been adjusted.
Right.
I was gonna, wherever I see, all committee members, I'll just change that to be all committee and board members. If that's, sounds like that's what the consensus is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
So we have a motion and a second for the discussed changes. Is there any further discussion, or can we move on to a vote?
I just point out that you need to do a global change on prevention because you didn't put it in any of the.
Well, I did it under the sexual harassment prevention training, but I didn't
Right.
get it in the workplace.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so as per discussed.
Yeah.
Okay, Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Day,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losi,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. I would request we do like maybe a 5 minutes, or a minute, a short break, and then we'll re-adjourn, go through the reports and the work session. Okay?
Thanks,
See you in a
everybody.
few minutes.
Andrew, I saw your name on some list of these trips for some training. And
Sign my name.
I saw your name, that you haven't done some training.
No, we haven't done some training.
Oh, you
I'm
haven't?
having a lot of trouble with my computer.
I saw it.
It's like today.
I said to Miriam, just call her up. I'm
Yeah.
sure she'll do the
Yeah.
training. I'm sure.
You can come in here and set up on the corner.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah.
Ugh. And then I took the job at the church. And I did all the training there.
Well, if you did the training at the church, you don't have to.
She does, because as Marilyn said, there's the worker
Different
one and the
level.
supervisor level, and that is
But
supervisor.
maybe you'll.
No,
have to do
I
it.
was the supervisor.
Oh, then
Down
you just
there?
send the
So
supervisor.
just get the thing from the church, that you just get something from the church that you did it. You're
Yes.
all set.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
You don't have to keep doing it over and over.
yeah, I just sent Bolton Point by one here, so I don't have to do it for Bolton Point.
Yeah, exactly.
I sent it quickly too, I didn't want to put that off and say, oh.
Oh, it says it's still on YouTube.
What?
Jesse sent me a message, we're still on YouTube.
We're still on YouTube.
And I hope it can still stay very well, just take a break.
Yeah, you better, I'll send, thank you. I just saw your message, thank you. Okay. Yeah,
Okay, I got that message from Bolton Point. Yeah.
You know, anybody with something else, they're always got it. They do the tops. Follow on. At the tops, we had an HR person. We tag every month. Then a set. We have to go file all.
Some of them need some.
This is fake. compared to other stuff. No, I mean, we gotta go. We gotta go through the other stuff, we gotta go through, what we got, shrink. We gotta go through.
Okay, so yeah, your whole conversation is getting recorded.
Well, I think it's fascinating. So they should listen. This is how the real stuff gets done. This is not like the hallway.
This is the part that is the one-on-one off to the side.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, the bipartisan, whole town type of kumbaya ish. Okay? Looking for some light reading on it? Looking for some light reading?
Like reading?
Yeah, light reading. You can't sleep. I always like to read a resolution. It's so boring. Whereas therefore, okay, from the whereas, here it comes, therefore.
so here's an interesting thing at our last meeting, we talked about the Salmon issue. And John Farrell was on the video. So he contacted me and said, hey, I got all this information. I'm like, sure, why don't you come back and say, video, this is the presentation, similar to that. Damn, I learned a lot.
So that was extremely helpful. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting when you talk to other supervisors and everything, saying, the bottom line, personal thing, is if there was a concise, here it is, but we're not there yet, and that's what concerns me, is that we're not there yet. And I'm extremely educated, of saying, okay, I've locked in, and where's the calculation, and where's the board, and the board, you know, we opt in, but they don't, let's say they don't put anything in.
Well,
I mean, and a little more importantly, we're supposed to have this discussion, but listen, or we shut up. Yeah, but it's,
we can do one-on-one, but just two of us.
I know, but never people are listening to that. No, I don't know. All that, all stuff is like everybody. And I know that it's like. La 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 la.
Okay.
Okay.
You did a good job, but I didn't answer. Oh, I was hoping it was funded.
No, that's great.
Basic. Yeah, that was your. What are you doing?
I'm just filling time. She's ready. Leaving that there.
So my understanding is all this cannabis is going to be grown in greenhouses under, high bright lights.
Are they going to standardize it like they do other herbs?
They're going to test it. So you heard them say that the taxes are based on the THC levels.
Right.
So, you're going to buy your seeds. Your seeds are going to be specially grown to create this much THC. You're going to grow it under the optimum conditions of humidity, sunlight.
But they'll test what the potency is, because with herbs, unless it says standardized on it, if they say it's, let's say, for instance, salt meadow, 250 milligrams, that's a guess, unless it's been tested, and there's a range it falls into. So you know it's within that range, because it's like, I kind of paint it to grapes. In a good year, right, it's wet, there's a concentration. If it's a dry year, there's a concentration, it varies. So anyways.
John says the taxes are based on testing it to see what its potency is. And the more potent, the higher the taxes. So they encourage them to not blitz people out.
So this is a wonderful.
I'm not sure if we have Brian here or not.
Hello, is everybody back?
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh,
Yep,
there you are.
I'm awake.
Mary Ellen, I don't know if your excellent input is needed anymore.
Hey,
I don't know if you're needed anymore tonight. It was you gave a great input.
thank you.
We're officially back on. So we like unadjourned.
I don't think we went off.
Yeah, right.
So it's up to you, Mary Ellen, if you want to call it a night. But I don't think we need you on anymore, but it's entirely up to you. You can stay on if you want.
Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you. If there's any questions, let me know.
I will. Thanks so much.
Okay, you're
Dave
welcome.
Herrick? Dave Herrick?
Good
I don't know. Good night. Do you still want to hang on, Dave Herrick? You're on mute, bud.
We're still on mute.
You're still on mute. There you go.
No, he's still on mute. There
I
we go.
apologize. I can certainly step out. I'm working all night, so I'm enjoying the discussion, but I can certainly step away if you'd like.
I
Well,
don't think there's any discussion here, though. I understand this is fascinating watching, but still, perhaps you have something else to do tonight. It's okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I will bid you all a good night, and we'll talk later.
All right, my friend. Take care. Bye. Okay. So are we now live-ish?
we've been live all along. We never,
All right,
We
so
never
we
got-
continue with our meeting then, and hopefully we can get out of here at a unreasonable time. So board member reports. Andra,
Yes, sorry.
I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, well, you've heard two of them, right?
I'm overwhelmed already. Keep
You're
going.
Library, services.
And the youths, as
And
Bill
then
Pesci would say.
I was on the Zoom for the CAC, which is the Conservation Advisory Committee, which is working pretty hard trying to figure out, well, not only the thank you notes to the different people who helped convince NICEAG to not put on a public auction the station, but also talking about the overloads. Scenic project.
I thought that was very appropriate there, thank you. Also asking for the board's input.
Yeah.
I thought that was very nice.
You know, Tom Butler and Carrie do a very good job. And then there was some EMC.
Okay.
So that's it.
Perfect. Rowan, you're up.
you missed,
I'm going to have that order. For you.
First.
Any
thing on
reports,
the
Rowan,
order.
out there?
Got
in-
it, yes.
far, far away?
Let's see, the ZBA approved a variance and there had been some back and forth with the applicant. And so it was neat to see that whole process work its way through. And I am confident that Joe's notes about the broadband committee are going to be thorough. the QUIO, the Cuba Lake Watershed Municipal Organization. I think you all got the report from them, but some quick highlights. A lot of what we did was talking about Bell Station because that hadn't been sorted by the time when we had the meeting. So that's a bit of a moot point now. The list of projects were submitted to the New York State Department of State by Kathy Bertucci, and I'm pretty sure we've got a couple in there, Lansing specific. And the LACPF met. I gave kind of an update on what the consultant is going to be doing because people were wondering what that was about. Talked a bit about the Bell Station land and its proximity to the power plant and all of that. And then talked a bit about what's happening at the Somerset plant. It's becoming a cryptocurrency site. And looking at what implications that may have for our site. The committee is going to work on pulling together some information to bring to the town board in their advisory role. So we have something so we can be ahead of the curve if that does something similar is brought here. But hopeful that things are moving on the state level to address this, because the sort of questions of cryptocurrency and all of that are way beyond one town's needs or concerns. So hoping that the state takes some leadership in that. I think that's the committee's feeling. I may be speaking personally in that part. And Hillary from the Cuba Lake Watershed Network gave a really fantastic presentation on sort of the history of the water data that we have from the area, and that explained that what's happening right now is the Community Science Institute is doing some really solid monitoring and getting good data. So we have information about what exactly is happening in the site and if any leachate is coming out or anything. And Friends of Salt Point had a cleanup day to clean up the.
They had a dedication, didn't they? For Mr. Isaac? Yeah, it was Isaac Pope. Isaac Pope, did they dedicate it?
Yes.
Isaac
Yep.
Pope? I mean, he has, and what a history he has. I mean, he's an amazing man. You're talking about Hillary Lambert, I think is one of the other.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Thank you.
She's quite
Blanked on her last name for a moment.
No, that's okay. No, I've known her a long time. She's quite a lady. Very good. Anything else?
No, that about covers it.
Okay, Doug?
Well, we had a planning board meeting back on the 27th of September. Talked about several different things. 168 Salmon Creek Road, there was a lot line adjustment, which the planning board put back into the lap of the code office to do an in-house lot line adjustment, similar to what has always been done. Talked about short-term rental again and beat it up pretty good. Just in that, we talked a long time about it. I don't know that we got there was any real, not resolution, but anything that came of it that hasn't already come up before. And then finally, they went over the moratorium and for the second time, basically told everyone they weren't in favor of it. And of course, Columbus Day, well, it was a Monday ago or about 2 Mondays ago, we didn't have anything for it being a national holiday for the planning board. So that's it.
Great. Joe?
I attended the cannabis consulting committee, whatever, not sure what it's actually called. And we got the same presentation from John, which we thought was so interesting and so informative that we brought it to the town board. I certainly learned a ton about this whole issue and thought I was fairly up to date on it. So I really appreciate John coming and doing a second presentation for the town. The broadband committee, the audit is starting on Spectrum. There were some paperwork issues that CJ cleaned up a few weeks ago. Spectrum needed to be sure that we actually did hire the code group, and so that's all been straightened out. So that should be proceeding. In terms of the county or the townwide broadband itself, we're disappointed that the county decided to stop their study altogether. They're now following Lansing lead, which is to figure out who actually isn't able to get broadband, not just through the census blocks, but through a real, go down the wire and look. And so it's nice to see everyone following Lansing's lead for a change. We are looking at what Dryden's doing and discussing the possibility of following a similar path. I got a bunch of stuff from Jason and passing it out to the committee just before the meeting, so we didn't have time to really talk it over. But the plan is to talk it over at probably not a November meeting, because I don't think we're going to meet on election night, which is our usual meeting. That's probably on our December meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it for now.
So broadband, the county, I got an email from them saying they did not want the $5,000. Did we ever send that to them? I think
We were never billed for it. We agreed to it. They never billed us for it. And when they dropped the study, they agreed to drop the bills from all the towns. So we never got billed for it, and we're not going.
So to your point about broadband, I think whether we could use some of this ARPA money for that, I don't know. But in the past, if one person had internet, they thought the whole road had internet, which is wrong. This is the final mile. We know some people that have to go outside their home and use their cell phone, which is problematic if they need to call for help and somebody's trying to get into their home. But anyway, these are things that need to be done now. So are you done with your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me segue to some of this. As far as the broadband goes, I had a phone call today with Jen Lyons, who is the aide to Anna Kellis. And bear with me because I'll segue back into this. She called about because somebody was concerned that they wanted some tax relief because they have such terrible water and they're outside of the district that they're going to have to, they want to have tax relief of some sort. And I think she may have also called Deb's office. I don't know. But I said, we can't do it at this level. But one thing we can do, which is at the state level, is that there are either a grant like they do for septic systems on the lake now, right, which people have utilized here, some sort of aid through HUD, through something else, Clean Water Act, that they can apply for if they have to put in water purification, whatever, but they're outside of that. We also wanted the outlay of district number 3, which the survey is done for that. And now it's a matter of actually, here is where the pipe actually will go. That price will come back. And that means that will come back once they are done with it. I don't think we've necessarily talked about this. So we'll have some hard numbers probably early next year. Having said that, also, we talked about Bitcoin. And we talked about, first of all, before we talk about Bitcoin, and this is where CJ comes in, we have that dark fiber. I think there's been movement on the bond to actually start moving, to get that started, the dark fiber going from the Guthrie area up to the old power plant. And regardless of what goes into the data center, you need the backbone, right? You need a dark fiber. I kind of take this to when I first got a microwave, and all I did was heat up pizza with it because I don't like hard warmed up pizza. I like soft crust. It was fantastic. Now I can't live without a microwave. You can find so many more things. Once you, and I know it's a simple example, but once you get that data center going, it is not Bitcoin or not. There are other things they can do. Let's find out from Somerset how they do that also, because we have an excellent chance to see how they do that. Is it water cooled? Is there other ways that they cool it? I don't know. Is there other options? Let's see how it goes and see what the pilot is amongst that. Now, if there's a moratorium on that, I know there's a word again from the governor, it is what it is. But in the meantime, the fiber's still got to be built. And now I'm going to segue over to the broadband. Now there's the backbone, here come the ribs, that's where the data is so essential. Do we use some of the ARPA money to get the final mile? Because Enfield breaks my heart that they had a grant for way back when. Supposed to be the final mile, and the final mile never got there. And I know we can't use our taxpayers' money for other municipalities, but this is where you say final mile, it's got to be final mile. And everybody's got to do it, because right now it's education, and it's also economics, okay? And it's also, whether you're doing the shopping, you're doing whatever, and it's also medical. These are all things we do now, so this is essential. So we talked about a few things as far as that goes with Anna Kellis. Let me jump over to the ARPA. And once again, This is something that we can talk about later, but I showed you the form letter that they wanted to do for Congress. And this is what I got it today at 2:16, so don't throw stones at me, I'm just saying this. And it's the last night the Senate unanimously passed section or law 3011, which significantly expands on how towns can spend ARPA funding. This issue has not gone to the House yet, and therefore it is not currently the law. However, we wanted to make sure our members are aware of this and suggest you reach out to your House of Representatives, urging them to support this measure. A sample letter attached. I can always qualify this to read personally. But that the bill would, here we go, allow localities to allocate up to 10 million of ARPA funds to provide government services without needing to calculate lost revenue. 10 million or 30% of ARPA allocations, whatever is more, to be used under a new separate provision that further allows infrastructure related activities authorized under federal surface transportation laws or Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. 3 allows funding to be used to provide emergency relief for natural disasters. Somebody think about Salmon Creek, or negative impact of a natural disaster, including temporary emergency housing, food assistance, financial assistance, or lost wages, or other immediate needs. Or maybe this goes towards Lovable Road. Don't know. These are things that opens up that maybe part of goes with what we don't know that. That's something Mikey is doing the estimates on that. My point is that from the board tonight, I'd like to have permission to, with a form letter, send it out to them, or I'll just call them personally, it doesn't matter, but urge our congressman to also put these provisions in. I think it expands it. That doesn't mean by law we have to do it, but it gives us more flexibility of how we move money. Once again, it's kind of like cannabis. The thing is moving. It has its own life. It's moving around, and whatever was there today wasn't there tomorrow. So I don't know if I need a motion or whatever, or a consensus. Doesn't matter to me, because I'll call them personally anyways. But this is something that I think the board should be aware of as we move forward, asking our congressman to vote yes on this law, the proposed law that the Senate text.
I think these things are stronger if they come from the board than if they come from us.
I'm fine with that. This is why we're having this courtesy conversation. And I'm happy with that. If you want to make a motion to allow me to do that, I'd be happy to do that.
I would move that.
All right. Anyone want to second it? Okay, I'm going to stay out of this because I don't want to vote for myself, but you guys can, Mrs. Munson?
Whoa.
Is it just a consensus? I'm trying to get out of here before the sun comes up.
Whoa, I need to know that's in the motion. Yeah.
Well, it's not just, I guess it's just a motion to allow me to write this letter of recommendation.
Okay, wait, I got.
In the name of the board.
In the name of the board. And there's the email to it. I just got to give it 2:16, so it's like, are you kidding me?
Better than coming to 7:15.
Yeah. Try to get that one with a straight face, right?
Okay, allow Ed to write recommendation on behalf of the town board, and you want number 1, 2, and 3?
Right, as for, yeah. To send a letter.
I mean, I won't put 1, 2, and 3. I'll type out what that is.
We'll also go on the town of Lansing.
Yeah.
You know which town it is.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's the town of Lansing. It's blank on the.
Oh, just this whole thing, okay.
Right, this is a form letter sense. I'll be happy to do that. Put it on town letterhead, make it formal, make it nice, and, put the signature at the bottom.
And you're gonna send it to Congressman Reed, is that what you're
Right,
gonna send it
to
to?
the House of Representatives.
We want to authorize you at this point to send a similar one to the senators.
It's already been passed, this.
Okay.
So the Congress is the missing piece.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, who made the motion? Was
Joe.
it Joe?
And I just second it. My apologies again, because I'm going to owe you 2 boxes of chocolate. So we're going with the World Spring.
Okay, do we have to have any discussion, or I don't know where everybody's
think
at with any of this.
I got that.
Okay, let's just go, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
No, the only other thing I ask is that we have a public hearing for a budget. If you have any questions, please reach out to the bookkeeper ASAP on that before we have a public hearing on the 3rd.
May I add one
Yes,
footnote
please.
to that?
Yes, please.
I have an email, well, I've had it for quite a while, from the Tompkins County Assessment Office about the tax bill processing, and which I know that involves my office and Charmaine's office. We have a lot of information we have to get down there so that then the assessment can do their part, print the bills and so on. And they have requested to have our information by November 15th, which fits in fine as long as we pass the budget at the next meeting on the 3rd, on the day of the public hearing. So I just wanted to mention that. So. No.
That's all I have for now. I can go on and on, as you know, but let's not. So let's go to work session.
Well, let me just do one quick question, one quick comment, because I think the step we want to do on the broadband is get some studies done as to how the town would build out from that fund, because we don't know what that is. And I think ARPA money is very lenient in terms of broadband stuff, and I would argue that we should use some of our ARPA money to figure out how we can build out on that spine and start with the neighborhoods that aren't getting any internet.
Totally agree. So let's get the yes, which is figure out a budget.
Mhm.
And what you need, because the ARPA, my understand, is to pay for invoices.
Mhm.
It's not to allocate to be used and then roll back in. It's to pay for invoices. So, you know, give us a budget, what you need. Let's get this thing done. Because this is not the first time we visited this, right? But I think now the plans might be in alignment to actually get this thing done. And I'm very concerned, especially when people try to work from home and they can't get a signal. So I need a budget. And then figure out what line, and then we'll move forward, because like I said, I'm a patient man, but I'm getting to a point where I get horror stories from other municipalities and they had a good faith and it breaks my heart. So, okay. Now, should we move on to the work session, which is the local law for short-term property rentals in town of Lansing? And that's something we're going to discuss, and we're going to read it over. CJ, you're on. I guess it's about the short-term rentals. We don't have paper
yes.
on that. That's something we can send to us then to look it over. and
You do
discuss it?
have it. You have the local law. I can go get them if you need them.
Hang
It's
on.
the same local law that we've had for about the last month. Well, over a month, because we had to have it for.
And this is something that
I could
the
just-
planning board's come up with, correct?
I could just give you just a really quick background on this issue. I know that the town board has been, well, it's more the planning board, I suppose, but trying to raise awareness, I suppose, of short-term rentals and a possible minimal intervention in the town in terms of getting short-term rentals regulated even to a minor degree. So we did ask planning board to advise on this topic broadly, to consider two approaches to regulating short-term rentals, something of a policy directive to you. And the first approach would be a very light touch. So that would be life safety registration and basic safety inspections. This just asks that we piggyback on the great county software that was recently approved for monitoring and analytics of short-term rentals. This allows us to just address the nuisance, occupancy, and life safety issues. Pretty easy to glom onto the county system and get them registered with the town based on that inventory, require an annual safety inspection, proof of septic or on-site wastewater adequacy, and provide essentially a 24-hour contact to the town. Rather than delve into making changes to the zoning based on the use, making a short-term rental a use per se, or going into fine-grained detail about where those could be permitted in the town. This simply requires that folks who do short-term rentals in the town register with the town and that they be meet basic safety standards. And so to that end, that draft local law is before you, and it's up for discussion, questions. This was just meant to kind of present these initial ideas to you, see if you wanted to make any changes that directive, whether you thought that policy was adequate, and any find out any additional information from you that you'd like to see.
So CJ, not to slow your roll here, but we don't have it in front of us, that packet of the proposed changes.
Sorry, I misspoke. My mind was on a different topic. I I have not seen any that I'm aware of, proposed information on the short-term rentals. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. This was meant to begin the conversation about it by helping just determine whether that policy's directive was indeed what you wanted to the town board to to the planning board, excuse me, to proceed with developing regulations. If so, they're largely complete and can move on for your consideration here sometime in the near future.
Okay, personal opinion is I'd rather go soft first. If that doesn't work, we'll go hard. And one of the things I've heard over and over again is that you can't get a hold of the owner. The noise is here. They're here for only a couple of days. My life's a living hell next door because I've been here for so many years. And how do you control it? Who do you get hold of, right? Who's the problem? And the last thing they want to do is walk over to the party house and tell them to quiet down and get chased off the property. And it sounds like this is something where we will actually have someone in contact amongst others to say, look, this is out of hand. You need to address this now. That is most of the complaints I'm getting from people that are renting out places on the lake, a week at a time, or whatever. And that's what the concern is. But moving forward, is there something that has been printed out that you could send to the board members for us to read and consider? And I don't want to kick this down the road, but I think we don't have time to look at it.
We could set a public hearing for maybe our December meeting to say we want to move on it. And
Well, we can do it in November
okay,
if we're comfortable. I mean, sooner than later. Just, we can maybe look at this and discuss it thoroughly at our November meeting, set the public hearing for December, and then have something hopefully completed if we're in a comfort zone to do that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, this was mostly just to help introduce this to the board a bit more broadly, make sure that this type of, I think, a somewhat light approach. Although that said, I just want to be clear that I think more than considering regulations as a use, that the emphasis that the planning board wanted to recommend to the town board was that the properties be inspected and safe, and that this is meant to address occupancy and life safety issues rather than getting into the minutia of whether this was indeed its own separate use, whether it should be governed by zoning, where in the town they should be allowed. It's meant to just say, short-term rentals exist as a thing in the town. The people, the county has put a significant investment into hosting this online monitoring and analytics platform, which allows the town to log in and see where people are home sharing on a bunch of different platforms. So Airbnb, VRBO, and they basically scrape the listings, and that they essentially provide the compliance to go. The compliance and enforcement documentation to go along with it. So what I was essentially, this is not urgent, not meant to be urgent. This is just meant to have a policy conversation about, do you think that this is a good way to proceed? If so, we can do so fairly, in fairly short order.
So the planning board has recommendations already?
Yeah, so they were asked to kind of consider those two approaches, whether to go with a zoning approach that was much more rigorous and fine-grained, or whether they really just wanted to keep this to life safety issues and largely just code enforcement issues. So, and they are recommending the latter, which I'm essentially passing that on to you.
Okay. If you could share that with us, I must have missed it. So does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Because I think we've come to a conclusion here at least, but please ask questions right now if you have it.
can I just say I'd like to move forward on that?
Me too. Okay. How about everybody else?
Me three.
Yeah, and I'll share this attitude with you. It's giddy up time. Giddy up time for the planning board.
Yep.
I'm not throwing stones at them, but they got a lot on their plate. I understand that, but we need to start moving stuff through.
Yeah, that's not them. Oh, okay. Okay.
And we're going to have a certain bar, and if they can't reach it, I wish them well. It's not a threat, but we have to have a certain performance. I understand there's a lot there, and I'm very receptive to them. But I think after our discussion tonight, we're well aware that there needs a different standard operating procedure moving forward, which is get this stuff to us at a certain time. And they have, that's fine. I'm not throwing stones at them, but we need to pick up the pace. So we have a conclusion, to send it to us. We'll make comments, hopefully set the public hearing in November for December and have a conclusion with that. And if that doesn't work, we have a backup plan. Rather than go light, we'll go heavy. Okay? Okay. And then this is not a criticism of you, CJ, because you've been doing 2 jobs for a long time. So I'm simply trying to say we're trying to give you as much tools as possible to move forward.
Sure. And to be fair, the process for which we'd even consider changes like that hasn't been altogether clear either. So some of these things just come out of recommendations, and they're things that people hear in the community that are important to their neighbors or friends or what have you. So that might be a nice segue into the next piece of the work session. But
Yes, let's just wrap this up.
Okay.
Unless you've got to go executive session, which is what kind of scope of work you want to do for the scope for the town. Like I said, not to put you on the spot, but there have been other times when the planner has set forth what the code changes should be to start the conversation with the planning board. Here are the parameters. If you don't like this, okay, you need to make the changes, get back to me ASAP, move forward, and have done with it. And I think we're at the point now where there's enough people on the board that say we need to, it's giddy up time. And I don't think a year is too drastic to ask, especially if they can get it to us within 3 to 6 months.
Okay, yeah. So if it would help, I'd like to. I think the request from the town board. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, are you comfortable with that? I mean, because you'll have the full support, I think, of the town board. To move forward.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, keep going.
So what I believe what we talked about last time was a conversation about the scope and objectives, as well as the timeline for the zoning update. So if I could just share my screen, I wanted to show you kind of the latest iteration. I've created a short link as well. So I do want to let the town board know if the moratoria does pass this evening, if you do pass that local law, I've prepared a press release to accompany that that will direct people via a short link to the document I'm about to show you, which will act as something of a living document throughout the code updates. So it just to keep people in the loop, but with fresh information that they can find fairly quickly. And hopefully we can get this posted on a fresh new, website as well here sometime soon. You'll see in front of you that, you, I believe, have seen a prior draft of this, but one of the things I think the town board was looking to address was, the regularizing the process, of these code changes. And within the resolution that is in front of you tonight for the land use moratoria is the establishment of a standing codes committee. The makeup of that and how you wish to appoint that that committee is one thing, but I think largely we have in mind a standing, mostly staff level codes committee that goes through regularized processes of receiving feedback from various boards, committees, and synthesizes those and makes recommendations to the town board on changes they think should be made. So within this, you'll see proposed milestones, a schedule of review. One of the things that was discussed at the last meeting was open house and an outreach period on some of these initial policy or regulatory recommendations to try to get our policy feet under us before we really start delving into the text. I think that's something I heard from town board members last time. Another thing I heard was a postcard mailed notice. So I did some quick checking on how much it would take to mail every address within the rural agricultural zoning district, and that was what came up as a very simple mailing. And then So anything you see here that's highlighted, I've essentially updated as part of this breakdown of what I want to suggest is actually a fairly blistering speed for changes to zoning. And everyone try not to laugh all at once, but that would put the final review as well as the environmental quality review and of the review of the map, all the comments from the county, a final public hearing, as well as a final vote on August 17th of 2022, based on a fairly, I would say, brisk review of the initial language that would come initially from the codes committee, go to the planning board for review, hit the various committees and highway, the fire department, other folks that need to be reviewed as well, with final review of the planning board coming in early April. So I know this looks a little slow, but I think that this is pretty fast to be able to turn around a zoning change of this magnitude, with also the, shall we say, a la carte features that I think were important to the town board, such as direct mailings to affected properties. For instance, a public information session to be held virtually and at town hall, ideally on a Saturday or definitely a weekend where folks could come in on their time that they had free, rather than kind of tailoring the experience to the department's convenience, but rather to go out and actively engage people at times where they tend to be more available. So anyway, so I think this is what you were looking for in terms of a timeline. And there it is. So, yeah.
So what are we looking at?
Any
I am
questions?
not on the screen here, so I gotta get in front of me, so I have a cheaters. So
Oh, sure.
when all is said and done, you're gonna scroll down, when is everything done though?
August,
So you're talking about 9 months, 10 months?
which is fast.
Well-
It's only fast, okay, it's only fast because we're used to being slow. But you know what? Fast now is gonna be normal. So as far as I'm concerned, I want to go in board member, but you know what? We took the moratorium off the table. And the bottom line is this thing's got to get done within a year. And I'm all 100% behind this. We've allocated, at least I have, of course the board will decide if they want to approve this, $40,000 in your budget for this. This thing has been dodged for about 20 years between the comp plan and everything else. So later's now, do what you got to do. But you know what? We got to get it done. Simple as that. And like I said before, the board was gracious enough to remove the moratorium angst. But I think, if that's the case with the planning board, it's getting up time, and whatever else has to be done, just get it done. Okay?
I've got a question or two, CJ. One is, what if this timeline gets pushed back because a committee isn't meeting or we can't get in touch with them or something like that? What would we just skip them? Like how would that work? Because I wouldn't want us to get stuck because, one of the committees that we really want input from is really busy working on something else. How would we address that?
Well, I think that the proposed timeline and milestones can be somewhat flexible, but at the same time, we're in Q4 of 2021, and we're letting folks know, if this, moratorium were to pass, or were it not. I suppose that's another conversation about whether the town board would want to keep the same kind of aggressive timeline, but I think that 4 months of lead time is fairly adequate to be able to provide comments within a 4 to 6 week period. Others may disagree, but yeah.
No, I completely agree. I just wondered, do we have a plan if that doesn't happen for some reason? Is there a sort of, are we able to still move forward with this?
Oh, well, in essence, the point of the, and hold on just a moment if I could. The essence of why we would want to set up our review framework in this way, and this is the reason why I've asked for this codes committee to come together, is for the codes committee to provide the initial draft so that folks don't have to, worry themselves about drafting technical language and worrying about that type of, is this legal kind of question right out of the
Right,
gate.
right, right.
And it's supposed to essentially go in a kind of an iterative cycle, but ultimately end up with the planning board as the final review of the document after all concerned committees and departments have been able to provide comments. And then with a final draft coming from the codes committee as essentially an official staff recommendation to town board. So, which of course the town board could then say, we'd really like to get additional committee recommendation on this particular section. Would you please refer that back? And we can again do that type of thing a la carte. But to keep to the kind of schedule we're looking to do, which involves obviously other agencies, other departments, and a swath of committees. I think we kind of have to keep to a timeline. So.
Thanks.
Anybody else have more questions?
CJ seems to be questioning whether or not we want to keep this timeline without the moratorium, and I just want to say yes. I want to keep the timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, this is the same situation where if you don't comply with your training, there's consequences. And the consequences are that if the committee can't do the job, then maybe we got the wrong people on it. I'm not throwing stones at people, but they have to be productive. And this is the criteria right now. Okay, this is what the number one priority is right now, is to get this zoning done. Dance with this long enough. And like I said, it's not scolding. We strongly urge that you have a sense of urgency and get the work done. This is your prime objective right now. Simple as that. And to follow CJ's lead, and quite frankly, I can't speak for other board members, but you have my support 100%. Like I said, I've already put in $40,000 in the budget. And hopefully that'll be passed. But the bottom line is, whatever it takes to get this done, we need to get it done. And that's it. And if people don't want to comply, I wish them well, but perhaps this isn't their calling, shall we say. And they need to find another area to put their skills. But we need to move forward on this now. I mean, if we continue down the same attitude we have, it's going to be another 2 years. And come on.
No, you're fine. You've said it more than once. We agree.
By adjourn?
Completely.
Or do I have to ask permission?
Completely.
I'm a little fired up here because it has, in all fairness, our planners trying to do stuff, and now it's time to have results from the other different committees. So I'm done.
I guess my quick question to CJ is, does the board need to give you anything else to give you the support you need to accomplish this?
Well, that's very thoughtful and courteous. We certainly appreciate that. I do want to thank you for, authorizing the hiring of another planner as a development review and stormwater management officer and, a host of other fantastic qualities. It definitely frees me up. I think we're going to have to, as we head into, the end of Q4, we're going to have some pretty serious conversations about the things that you want me to keep doing and the things that you don't. I think some clear policy directive on the draft work plan will be very helpful. And it may mean that I'm, just not attending some meetings. It may mean, could mean a host of things, but I'm looking forward to having those conversations with all of you in the first week of November and December. And this is also a time where we're going to be reflecting on this broader policy framework. And I think, and Bronwyn, I hope, I don't mean to in any way to diminish roles of, committees. They're obviously, significant volunteers, and we're very mindful of that contribution always. But I think what I want to say is that, I have to be thinking about my availability during that time, because I know that I'm going to be getting a host of questions from, 3 or 4 committees that have 4 to 6 members on them. If they're really actually engaged, are going to be a significant commitment, really, or demand, I should say, on my time. And I want to make sure that I'm fully available to them. And if I'm able to make that gap a little bit in March, and know that coming ahead and putting those work blocks in place, then I'm able to be much more efficient and keep the process moving forward. So, yeah, anyway.
Good, good. So any other questions? If not, do we have anything for executive session? If not, does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I will.
I second it.
Any further discussion?
Oh, wait a minute, it's time, 9:30.
9:30.
Perfect.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Hi.
All right, good work, everybody.
Opposed?
Stay focused.